Many games come and go each year. Most get forgotten or feel dated within months or years, but some games, yeah, just a few of them, are those generational masterpieces that we get once every couple of years or even a decade. Games that still hold up so well to this day, you'd have a hard time finding a flaw. Now, in this video, we're gonna look at games based on all aspects. Some have gameplay that holds up incredibly well, still feels smooth and fluid as hell, while others have graphics that bless your eyes every time you look at them, or narratives so good and deep you still can't forget about them. Well, you get the idea. So, let's jump into our first game. Prince of Persia: Sands of the Time. So Prince of Persia: Sands of Time came out in 2003, and honestly, this game still rocks. The main thing that makes it special is that rewind time mechanic with the dagger. You mess up a jump, and instead of starting over, you just rewind a few seconds and try again. It's such a simple idea, but it works perfectly and keeps the game from getting frustrating. The movement in this game was insane for its time. The prince just flows through levels, running on walls, swinging on poles, doing flips and all that parkour stuff. Even now, it looks smooth and feels good to control. A lot of games from 2003 are clunky as hell when you go back to them, but this one still plays great because the core mechanics are solid. The whole game takes place in this massive palace, and you're basically solving these big environmental puzzles. You gotta figure out how to get from one area to another using all your moves. The level design is really smart, and when you nail a tough section, it feels awesome. The palace looks cool too, with all that Persian architecture and style that gives it its own vibe. Combat is pretty basic, but it gets the job done. You fight these sand monster things, and you can slow down time or do acrobatic attacks. It's not super deep, but it looks stylish and breaks up the platforming nicely. The dagger powers make you feel badass, which is what matters. What really makes this game stand out is the story presentation. The prince narrates everything like he's telling you this tale, and it just works so well. His voice is great, and the writing is actually good. When you die and rewind, he'll say stuff like, "No wait, that didn't happen," which is a clever way to tie the gameplay into the story. His relationship with Farah develops throughout the game, and you end up caring about both characters. The atmosphere is top-notch. The music has that Middle Eastern sound that fits perfectly. The palace feels mysterious and ancient with all these traps and secrets everywhere. It just sucks you in and makes you want to keep exploring. Yeah, the graphics are super dated now, textures are blurry and models are basic, but the gameplay holds up so well that you stop noticing after a while. The platforming is responsive, controls are tight, and the puzzles are clever. That's what matters more than fancy graphics anyway. The game respects your brain too. It doesn't spam markers telling you exactly where to go. You gotta look around and figure out the path yourself, which feels way more rewarding. The pacing is solid, no filler or padding, just a focused adventure that takes about 10 hours. This game basically invented the parkour action game formula that tons of games copied later. Assassin's Creed took massive inspiration from it. But even with all those games that came after, Sands of Time still holds up on its own because the execution is just that good. Playing it now is still fun as hell. The movement feels great, rewinding time never gets old, and the story keeps you hooked. Good game design doesn't age, and this is proof of that. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is a classic that's still worth playing even 20 years later. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. So, Uncharted 2: Among Thieves came out way back in 2009, and this game is still absolutely incredible, even today. Like, seriously, when you boot this thing up now, it barely feels like it came from the PlayStation 3 era, because Naughty Dog just nailed everything about it. The visuals in this game were mind-blowing when it dropped, and honestly, they still hold up really well. The way Nathan Drake moves through these environments, climbing up ancient temples and jumping across crumbling buildings, it all still feels smooth and natural. The environments are packed with detail and color, from the snowy mountains in Tibet to the lush jungles and busy city streets. Nothing feels empty or lifeless, even after all these years. But what really makes Uncharted 2 age like fine wine is the storytelling and characters. Nathan Drake is just such a likable guy. He cracks jokes and gets himself into these crazy situations, but you actually care about what happens to him. The banter between him and the other characters feels real and natural, not like those stiff, awkward conversations you get in older games. The action set pieces in this game are legendary. That opening scene where you wake up in a train hanging off a cliff immediately hooks you in. Then you got moments like escaping from a collapsing building while a helicopter is shooting at you, or that insane convoy chase through the streets where you're jumping between trucks and fighting bad guys. These moments were incredible in 2009, and they're still thrilling to play through today because they're designed so well. The pacing never lets up, and you always feel like you're in this epic action movie. As for the gameplay itself, it's nothing too crazy, but smooth and has a perfect balance between shooting, climbing, and puzzle solving. The gunfights are punchy and satisfying. The platforming is fun without being too challenging. Well, unless you are playing on brutal difficulty, then it becomes even harder than some Souls games, to be honest. But anyway, the point is, many games from that era feel really clunky now when you go back to them, but Uncharted 2 still feels responsive and tight. The controls just work, and you're never fighting against the game itself. The level design deserves a lot of credit too. Every chapter feels different and takes you to a new location with its own vibe. You go from museums to war-torn cities to mountain villages to ancient temples, and it never gets boring. The game keeps throwing you new scenarios, so you're always excited to see what comes next. Even replaying it years later, those locations still feel fresh and exciting to explore. One thing that really stands out when you play it now is how focused the whole experience is. The campaign is like 10 to 12 hours and every single part of it matters. There's no filler, no boring fetch quests, no padding to artificially make the game longer. You just go from one awesome set piece to the next, and the pacing never drags. In a time where every game wants to be 50 hours long with a million icons on the map, Uncharted 2 feels refreshing because it tells its story and ends at the right time. Uncharted 2 basically set the template for action-adventure games that came after it. You can see its influence all over the place in modern games. It proved that you could make a game that felt like playing through a summer blockbuster movie while still having solid gameplay mechanics. Tons of games tried to copy this formula, but very few pulled it off as well as Naughty Dog did here. Also, technically, when the game came out, Naughty Dog squeezed every last drop of power out of the PS3 hardware, and it shows. Uncharted 2 is one of those rare games that just got everything right. The action, the story, the characters, the visuals, the pacing, it all comes together into this perfect package that's just as fun to play now as it was back in 2009. It's the kind of game that reminds you why you love video games in the first place. Whether you played it when it first came out or you're discovering it for the first time today, it delivers an incredible adventure that never gets old. That's why it's aged like fine wine and will probably continue to be amazing for years to come.
Pretty good shot for a journalist.
Titanfall 2. From the very start, Titanfall 2 throws you into a world that's fast, loud, and completely insane. You're not just running around shooting people like every other shooter. The game gives you crazy movement tools that make you feel like a superhero. You can run on walls, jump really high, slide under bullets, and chain moves together in a way that makes you feel smart and powerful. And then there's the Titans, these giant walking robots that are huge, heavy, and so satisfying to control. You're not just in a mech for show. You fight side by side with your Titan, and it actually feels like a partner. You watch it move, follow your orders, and cover you in combat, and that relationship just makes the game feel alive. Also, the story is actually so good here. You play as Jack Cooper, a normal soldier who suddenly has to bond with a Titan named BT. At first it's awkward, but by the end you actually feel like you're a team. The writing isn't super deep or complicated, but it works because the characters feel real in their own way. The missions in the campaign are unforgettable. One moment you're doing insane parkour across huge buildings, the next you're inside a moving train trying to figure out a puzzle while under fire. The level design is clever. Every map has little tricks and secrets that reward you if you explore. You feel creative because the game lets you tackle fights in different ways. Sometimes sneaky, sometimes all-out crazy shooting, sometimes switching between you and your Titan to pull off cool combos. Even the small details make it memorable. The way the guns feel heavy but responsive, the way the Titans stomp and shake the ground, the way explosions look huge but never confusing, the game never feels unfair. You always know what's going on, but it keeps pushing you to be better. Graphics-wise, it still looks good. The levels have bright colors, futuristic cities, forests, and war-torn bases that all feel different. The sounds hit hard too. The clank of Titans, gunfire, explosions, even the hum of the engines make you feel like you're really in the middle of all this chaos. Titanfall 2 doesn't try to be flashy for no reason. It just makes everything you do feel satisfying. You never get bored because it's fast, clever, and full of surprises. Find new tricks, new paths, new moments that you didn't notice the first time. That's why Titanfall 2 aged so well. Because it's not just basic shooter, the game makes you feel fast, smart, and powerful. And every mission, every fight, every jump feels exciting. It's still the kind of game that makes you want to play it all the way through again. Metro 2033. The setting is what really makes this game special. You're living underground with all these survivors because the surface is too irradiated and full of mutants. The metro stations became little communities and each one has its own feel. Some are friendly, some are sketchy as hell, and you're just trying to survive while moving through them. The world building is incredible. You really feel like this is what life would be like after everything went to hell. The atmosphere is thick as hell in this game. It's dark, claustrophobic, and you're constantly on edge. Your flashlight battery runs out, your gas mask cracks, and you gotta find filters before you suffocate. Ammo is scarce, so every bullet counts. The game makes you feel vulnerable, which is rare for shooters. Most shooters make you feel like a one-man army, but Metro makes you feel like you're barely scraping by. The gunplay is weighty and deliberate. Weapons feel rough and improvised because that's exactly what they are. You're using guns that were cobbled together from spare parts in the tunnels. They jam, they're inaccurate, but that's the point. It adds to the whole survival feel. Combat is tense because you can't just spray bullets everywhere, you gotta make your shots count. What's really cool is the stealth system. You can sneak through a lot of sections if you're careful, taking out lights and avoiding enemies. Your watch glows when you're hidden in shadows, which is a simple but effective way to show if you're detected. Stealth feels rewarding and saves you precious ammo. The monsters in this game are genuinely creepy. The mutants on the surface are terrifying, and when you hear them screeching in the dark, it gets your heart pumping. The librarians especially are nightmare fuel. These big gorilla-looking things that can kill you in seconds. Running into them always sucks, but in a good way, because they're actually threatening. The gas mask mechanic is brilliant. When you're on the surface, you gotta wear it, and keep swapping out filters or you die. Your mask can crack if you take damage, and you hear your breathing get more panicked as the filter runs out. It adds so much tension to every surface section. You're constantly checking your watch to see how much time you got left. The story's based on a novel, and it shows. There's actual depth to the narrative and the characters. Artyom's journey through the Metro feels meaningful, and the different factions you meet all have their own motivations. The Rangers are trying to protect people, the Reds and Nazis are fighting for control, and you're caught in the middle of it all. The moral choice system is hidden too, which is cool. The game doesn't tell you when you're making important decisions. Visually, the game still looks pretty good. The lighting is fantastic. All those dark tunnels lit by flickering lights in your flashlight create such a moody atmosphere. The surface sections with snow and ruins look bleak and desolate. Yeah, textures are dated, but the art direction carries it hard. The Redux version updated the graphics, but even the original holds up decently. Sound design in Metro is phenomenal. Every creak and groan in the tunnels puts you on alert. The way sound echoes through the Metro, the distant screams and gunfire, it all adds to the immersion. Wearing headphones while playing this game is intense because you're constantly listening for threats. The Metro stations you visit are all unique. You got the Venice station flooded with water, the market at Exhibition where people trade, the Nazi-controlled stations with propaganda everywhere. Walking through these areas and just listening to people talk gives you so much context about this world. The game does a great job making you feel like you're actually in this post-apocalyptic society. Ammo being currency is such a smart touch. Military-grade bullets work as money, but they're also the best ammo for your guns, so you're constantly deciding whether to spend them or save them for tough fights. It adds another layer to the resource management. The pacing mixes combat, exploration, and story really well. You're not just shooting constantly, there's downtime where you're walking through stations, talking to people, soaking in the atmosphere, and then suddenly you're in a firefight or running from monsters and the tension spikes. That variety keeps the game engaging throughout. GTA 4. This game is still one of the best in the series, even though a lot of people overlook it now. Rockstar went for something way more serious and grounded compared to the crazy over-the-top stuff in GTA 5, and honestly, it paid off. The story is what really sets this one apart. You play as Niko Bellic, this Eastern European immigrant who comes to Liberty City chasing the American dream, but instead of finding success, he gets pulled into the criminal underworld trying to survive and find the guy who betrayed him back in the war. The writing is genuinely good, and Niko is probably the most well-written protagonist in any GTA game. He's not just some psycho who loves killing, he's actually conflicted about the violence, and you can tell he's tired of this life. His conversations with his cousin, Roman, and other characters feel real and have actual depth to them. Liberty City itself is incredible. It's based on New York, and it actually feels like a real city. The buildings look lived in, and the whole place has this gritty atmosphere. It's not as colorful or sunny as Los Santos, but that's the point. The city feels cold and harsh, which matches the tone of the story perfectly. Even now, the city design holds up because it feels authentic. The physics in this game are still unmatched. The car handling has actual weight to it, vehicles feel different from each other, and crashes are brutal and realistic. Yeah, it takes some getting used to if you're coming from GTA 5 where everything is more arcadey, but once it clicks, the driving feels so satisfying. Cars bounce and roll realistically when they crash, and the damage modeling is still impressive today. The ragdoll physics are hilarious and amazing. Shooting someone or hitting them with a car sends them flying in realistic ways. Getting into car chases and watching enemies tumble across the hood never gets old. The Euphoria physics engine they use just makes everything feel more dynamic and unpredictable. Also, I'd say the combat is solid and more tactical than other GTA games. The cover system works well, and gunfights actually require you to think a bit instead of just running in guns blazing. Headshots matter and enemies react realistically when you shoot them. It's not the most advanced shooter mechanics, but it gets the job done and feels weighty. GTA 4 gets criticized for being too serious or the gameplay being too slow, but that's exactly what makes it age well. It tried something different and actually pulled it off. The story is mature and well told, the city feels real, and the physics are still the best in the series. Playing it now feels refreshing because it's not trying to be a theme park like GTA 5. It's a focused crime drama that happens to be in a video game. The characters are memorable, and Liberty City is still one of the best open-world settings ever made. GTA 4 aged like fine wine because it prioritized storytelling and atmosphere over just being wacky and over the top. It's a different kind of GTA, but it's aged better than people give it credit for.
Yes, I can make this filthy woman fall under my dominion. Oh, Ryse, yes! Eat shit! Oh, oh, Laurel! Laurel! Oh, you're a quadriplegic.
Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. The Witcher 3 is one of those rare games that just doesn't feel old at all. You look at it now, years after it came out, and it still hits in almost every way. The story's huge, full of crazy twists, and it's the kind of story that actually sticks with you. You play as Geralt, a monster hunter. And yeah, you're out hunting monsters, but it's way more than that. You're traveling across this massive world, meeting people with their own lives, helping some, ignoring others, and every choice feels like it actually matters. Some decisions can bite you later, some feel really rewarding, and that's the kind of writing that makes a game timeless. Even side quests feel special. You're not just killing 5 rats or running fetch quests, you might be helping a merchant with a problem that turns out to be darker than it first looks, or finding a lost kid who changes your story in a small but memorable way. The world is insane. You can ride your horse through forests, swampy lands, or snowy mountains, and each place feels different and alive. Cities feel real, full of people arguing, merchants shouting, guards patrolling, and sometimes chaos happening just in the background. The attention to detail is wild. You can just wander for hours and stumble into something interesting, and it still feels like an adventure, not filler. The weather and day-night cycle make it feel alive too. A sunny day feels peaceful, a rainy night feels tense, and hunting monsters at night in the fog is genuinely scary even today. Combat is another reason it aged so well. It's not some simple point and shoot. You have to plan, prepare your gear, pick the right sword, use magic signs, drink potions, and even set traps. Every fight feels like a puzzle in its own way, especially the big monsters. You can't just button mash, you have to think. And because there's so much variety in enemies, it never gets boring. Every fight feels satisfying, tense, and exciting. Even the visuals, voice acting, and music still hold up. Forests look dense, rivers shine, villages feel lived in, and the music is so good, it really sets the mood for every scene. Geralt's world is messy, dangerous, but also beautiful. And it's that mix that makes the game still feel alive today. Basically, The Witcher 3 aged like fine wine because it got almost everything right. Story, world, characters, combat, and even the little details you notice when you're just wandering around. You can jump back into it now and it still feels massive, exciting, and completely alive. You can replay quests, wander into new areas, and discover stuff you missed the first time. That's why it's still one of the best games ever made, and why it holds up even today.
In one piece. I shall be waiting.
I hate portals.
Rise of the Tomb Raider. So Rise of the Tomb Raider came out in 2015, and this game is absolutely stunning even today. Crystal Dynamics took everything that worked in the 2013 reboot and just made it better in every way. The visuals in this game are still jaw-dropping. You're exploring these snowy mountains in Siberia, and the environments are gorgeous. The way snow looks and behaves is insane. Laura leaves footprints that actually sink in realistically, and snow clings to her clothes and hair. The lighting is beautiful, especially when sun breaks through the trees and frozen forests. Even now, this game can compete with stuff that came out recently because the art direction and technical work are just that good. The tombs in this game are finally actual tombs worth exploring. The 2013 game was criticized for not having enough tomb raiding, and Ryse fixed that completely. The optional tombs you find are these massive puzzle-filled areas that feel like actual ancient ruins. You're figuring out how to use physics and the environment to reach treasure, and it's so satisfying when you solve them. These tombs are the highlight of the game, and they really make you feel like you're discovering something that's been hidden for centuries. The gameplay loop is addicting and satisfying. You're exploring areas, gathering resources, crafting better gear, unlocking new abilities, and finding secrets everywhere. The semi-open areas give you room to explore and approach situations differently. You can go in stealthy, pick enemies off with arrows, or just start a firefight. The game rewards exploration with cool upgrades and lore that adds to the story. Combat feels really good too. The bow is still the best weapon, and landing headshots is super satisfying. You got different arrow types for different situations, and the stealth kills look brutal. Laura moves fluidly through environments, sliding under obstacles, climbing quickly, and it all feels smooth and responsive. The animations are top tier, and everything flows together naturally. The crafting system adds a nice survival element. You're collecting materials to make ammo, healing items, and special arrows. It's not super deep, but it gives you something to do while exploring and makes you pay attention to your surroundings. Finding resource stashes hidden around the map feels rewarding. Dishonored. Man, Dishonored is such a crazy ride, huh? The first thing you notice is the city of Dunwall. It's creepy, dirty, kind of alive in its own twisted way, and it just grabs you. You're playing as Corvo, who's been framed for a murder he didn't do, and suddenly you're stuck in this giant mess of politics, revenge, and corruption. The cool thing is, the game doesn't hold your hand. You can sneak around, peek into alleyways, eavesdrop on guards talking, and just figure stuff out for yourself. Or, if you're feeling bold, you can go full chaos and just wreck everyone in sight. And yeah, the city reacts to that. Kill too many people and the world gets darker and scarier. Play clean and people notice. That freedom, man, it's still insane and rare in most games. The levels are genius. Every rooftop, balcony, and hidden corner feels like it's begging you to explore it. You can teleport across gaps with blink, crawl through pipes, climb ledges, and just experiment endlessly. And honestly, some of the best moments happen when you just go off script. You might find a secret room you didn't expect, or overhear a guard's private conversation, or stumble onto a tiny story that makes you chuckle or even feel a little guilty. It's those little surprises that keep the game feeling alive years later. Combat and powers are another reason this game aged so well. Blink is obvious, but using possession to take over a rat or guard and sneak past a patrol, it never gets old. Bend time lets you slow everything down just enough to pull off crazy moves. Every fight, even small ones, feels tense because you're not just hacking and slashing. You have to think, plan, and decide how much chaos you want to cause. And the gadgets are fun too, from grenades to crossbows. There's a ton of ways to approach every encounter. The story is dark, messy, and actually memorable. You've got corruption, revenge, betrayal, and a few really cool twists along the way. But the game also takes its time letting you notice little things in the world, like newspapers, letters, graffiti, or citizens talking. It makes Dunwall feel alive. Even years later, you can get lost just wandering the streets, discovering little stories that don't even matter to the main plot. And honestly, the art style is perfect. It's gritty, it's kind of weird in a cool way, and it hasn't aged badly at all. The lighting, the sounds, the music, it all just hits. And combined with the level design and powers, it makes the game feel timeless. Dishonored aged like fine wine because it's smart, flexible, and full of surprises. You can play it now, experiment with powers in ways you never tried before, and still get those holy crap moments that make you smile, or sometimes make you feel guilty for being a little evil. Bioshock. The moment you hit the water and see Rapture, the underwater city, you will be hooked. It's dark, creepy, and beautiful all at the same time. You're basically trapped down there trying to figure out what happened, and the city is falling apart around you. That mix of being scared, curious, and amazed at the same time is something that really hasn't aged. Every corner of Rapture feels alive. Broken elevators, flickering lights, abandoned offices, and rooms full of secrets make you feel like the city has a story of its own, and you're just seeing a piece of it. The story is really what makes Bioshock timeless. You play as Jack, and at first it seems simple. You're just trying to survive. But the way the plot twists and reveals itself is brilliant. The characters you meet are memorable, creepy, and sometimes tragic. The way the game toys with you, makes you question your choices, and even flips the story on you, that still hits hard today. It's smart storytelling that doesn't feel forced, and that's rare in games, especially older ones. Combat is tight and still feels really good. You can mix guns and plasmids, which are basically powers, to take down enemies in creative ways. You can set fire, electrocute, or freeze enemies, and combine that with your weapons for really satisfying fights. Ammo is limited, so you always feel like you're making smart choices, and every encounter has some tension to it. Even now, it doesn't feel clunky. It's smooth, it's fun, and the variety keeps it interesting no matter how many times you play. Then there's the world design, which is just insane. The city feels dangerous, but it also has this twisted elegance. The Art Deco style mixed with decay makes it memorable. Little things like audio diaries, scattered notes, or creepy little details on walls make you stop and think about what life used to be like in Rapture. You can spend hours exploring and still find stuff you missed the first time. Batman Arkham City.
Don't be stupid. If you keep that door closed, he can't get out, and we're...
So Batman Arkham City came out in 2011, and this game is still the peak of superhero games. Rocksteady took what made Arkham Asylum great and just expanded it into this massive open-world prison, and it's incredible. The setting is genius. Instead of just being in the asylum, now there's this huge section of Gotham that got turned into a giant prison where all the criminals just roam free. You got different gangs controlling different areas, iconic villains running their own territories, and Batman is just dropped right in the middle of it all. Flying around this dark, twisted city as Batman never gets old. The combat system in this game is still the best. It's that free-flow combat where you're chaining attacks together, countering enemies, using gadgets, and it all feels so smooth and badass. When you get a good rhythm going and you're taking down like 15 thugs without getting hit, you genuinely feel like Batman. Every punch has weight to it and the animations are so fluid. Tons of games tried to copy this combat system after Arkham City, but most of them don't nail it like Rocksteady did. Gliding around the city is pure freedom. You grapple up to a building, dive off, glide over the streets, grapple boost to go higher, and you're just soaring over Arkham City. The traversal feels amazing and getting around is fun instead of being a chore. You're not just fast traveling everywhere because actually moving through the world as Batman is enjoyable. The villain roster is insane. You got Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Riddler, Hugo Strange, Mr. Freeze, and more all in one game. Each of them has their own storyline and missions and they all feel important. The side missions where you track down other villains like Zosh or Deadshot add so much content. You're constantly running into Batman's rogues gallery, and it's a comic book fan's dream. The Mr. Freeze boss fight is legendary. It's one of the best boss fights in gaming because you can't use the same tactic twice. He adapts to whatever you do, so you gotta use different takedown methods throughout the fight. It actually makes you think and use all your tools instead of just button mashing. That fight alone shows how smart the game design is. The story is really well done. Hugo Strange knows Bruce Wayne is Batman, and there's this whole conspiracy about what Protocol 10 actually is. Joker is dying, and he infected Batman with his blood, so there's a ticking clock element. The narrative keeps you hooked, and the voice acting is top tier. Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as Joker are perfect, as always. Catwoman's sections are a nice change of pace. She plays differently than Batman, more agile and focused on whip attacks. Her story ties into the main plot and gives you a different perspective on what's happening in Arkham City. The chemistry between her and Batman is great too. Visually, the game still looks pretty good. The art direction carries it hard. Arkham City has this dark, gothic atmosphere with neon signs and snow falling. Each area has its own visual identity. The Iceberg Lounge looks different from Joker's territory, which looks different from the Industrial District. The city feels like a character itself.
There's some kind of fight going on over there! Which way is out?
Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 3 is one of those horror games that, even years later, still feels like it's doing something unique. It came out back in 2003, and it was the first main numbered entry on PlayStation 2, which already gave it a kind of next-level polish compared to the older games. But more than the graphics, it's the way the game builds its world that makes it stand out. You play as Heather, who's pulled into this twisted version of her past. And the game isn't afraid to get personal. A lot of horror games from back then just focused on jump scares or cheap thrills, but Silent Hill 3 keeps you tense because the world itself feels heavy. Every street, mall, or abandoned building has a story, and often that story ties into Heather's life or the messed up cult stuff that's going on in the city. The story connects directly to the first Silent Hill, which gives it some deep roots. Heather isn't just wandering a spooky town, she's dealing with the consequences of events from the first game, even though she didn't experience them directly. That sense of continuity is something fans really loved, and it's one of the reasons the game still feels rich today. You care about her journey, her fears, and the weird ways the town seems to reflect her inner struggles. And it's not just story for story's sake. The environments, the monsters, the puzzles, they all tie into that narrative. Gameplay-wise, Silent Hill 3 is slower and more methodical than modern horror games. Combat is limited. You've got a few weapons, and ammo isn't endless, so every encounter feels tense. You can't just rush through everything. Sometimes it's better to run or use your head rather than fight. The puzzles are clever, often integrated into the environment, so you actually feel like you're exploring and interacting with the world rather than just pressing buttons. And the monsters themselves aren't just enemies. Their designs are symbolic and psychological. They tie into Heather's fears and the cult's twisted ideas, which makes each encounter feel meaningful instead of random. The atmosphere is probably what makes Silent Hill 3 age so well. Even today, the fog, lighting, and sound design hold up. The game uses darkness and sound in a way that's still unsettling. That weird hum of machinery, distant screams, the shuffle of monster footsteps, it all adds up. The art direction is grim but unique. The city isn't just abandoned, it's decaying in a very specific way. Malls, hospitals, and alleyways are all designed to feel lived in and then broken, which creates tension without needing constant jump scares. Silent Hill 3 also has the sense of style that stands out. The character designs, the monster designs, and even the way the story unfolds shows a lot of care. You can tell the developers weren't just trying to make something scary, they wanted something that made you think and feel. That's why even today, people still replay it, explore the environment slowly, and notice little things each time. The pacing, story, and atmosphere all come together in a way that modern horror often misses. Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge is still a pretty interesting game to come back to, even though it's not perfect. Honestly, the story is kind of thin. You're playing Faith, and yeah, she's trying to fight this controlling city, but a lot of the characters don't really stick with you. Some of the plot moments are a little forgettable, and there's not a ton of depth beyond Faith's personal struggle. But the thing that makes the game special is how it makes you feel when you're actually moving. Running across rooftops, sliding under barriers, chaining moves together, it's still satisfying in a way very few first-person games have done. The parkour system is clever, but it can be frustrating too. Sometimes the controls feel a little stiff, and if you mess up a jump or a grab, you'll fall and have to redo it, which can be annoying. And some of the levels can feel a bit empty or too linear, like the designers wanted to guide you too much with the color-coded paths. But when it works, it really works. There's a flow to the movement that makes you feel like you're actually navigating this futuristic city, and the game rewards experimenting with routes and chaining moves together. Combat is, well, it's kind of limited. You mostly punch and kick, but honestly it works with the game's focus on movement. You're supposed to dodge, slide, and flow through enemies, not just mash buttons. It's tense, satisfying when you pull off a tricky move, and it keeps you on your toes. Still, it can feel a bit repetitive after a while. The visuals have aged surprisingly well. The city is bright, minimalistic, and the red highlights make it easy to see where to go, but it also gives the game a unique look that hasn't really aged. And the soundtrack is still really good for building tension while you're running across rooftops. So yeah, Mirror's Edge isn't flawless, the story is weak, combat is limited, and some jumps or level designs can be frustrating, but movement is still a blast. The parkour system feels smart, and the world design makes you feel like you're actually running through a city instead of just moving from point A to point B. That's why it aged as well as it did. It's not perfect, but it's still worth playing today because the core idea of flowing through the world is just that satisfying. Mass Effect 2. So Mass Effect 2 dropped in 2010, and man, this thing is legendary. You start the game by straight up dying, which is a hell of a way to kick things off. Shipwreck gets spaced and Cerberus brings you back to life 2 years later. Now you gotta work with these shady folks to figure out why entire human colonies are vanishing. The whole point of this game is building a crew for what's basically a suicide run. You're flying around the galaxy recruiting the most badass and skilled people you can find. Every single person you bring onto the Normandy has their own baggage and problems. That's where the game really shines because these aren't just random teammates, they're actual people with depth. Those loyalty missions hit different because they matter for the endgame. When you help someone work through their daemons, they become loyal. If they're not loyal when you hit that final mission, they can actually die for good. Knowing that makes every choice feel heavy. You're not just clicking through dialogue, you're building relationships that determine who makes it out alive. Combat got a massive upgrade from the first game. It plays like a proper third-person shooter now with cover mechanics that work smoothly. Using biotic powers to lift enemies, then blasting them feels great. Each class plays totally different, so replaying as a soldier versus an adept is like a fresh experience. Yeah, it's not as deep as dedicated shooters, but it's fun enough that fights don't feel like a chore. They cut a lot of the annoying RPG bloat from the first game. No more inventory management hell or driving the Mako across empty planets for an hour. Some hardcore RPG fans weren't happy, but it lets the game focus on what it does best, which is characters and storytelling. The streamlining works in its favor.
Damn it, Wilson. This room is crawling with mechs.
The whole station is crawling with mechs. I'm doing the best I can.
Mad Max. Mad Max is one of those games, it's kind of underrated when you think about it, but it still holds up pretty well if you know what to appreciate. The first thing that hits you is the world itself. It's massive, dusty, and feels properly post-apocalyptic. Driving across the desert, jumping from one scrap pile to another, or just wandering around the wasteland, you get this real sense of how harsh the world is. There's junk everywhere, old cars, broken buildings, scrap towers, and scavenging it all to build up your car and gear is satisfying in a way few games really capture. It's not flashy like some modern open-world games, but the world has personality. You can tell the developers really wanted to make the wasteland feel lived in, dangerous, and oppressive. Driving is where the game really shines. The magnum opus, your car, feels weighty and powerful. Upgrading it is fun because each upgrade makes a noticeable difference. You can slam through enemies, harpoon their cars, or equip weapons that change how you fight. Vehicle combat is tense and chaotic in a good way. Ramming an enemy convoy while weaving through explosions and shooting out tires never gets old. The way the car handles, especially when you're boosting or trying tricky maneuvers, still feels smooth today. Honestly, if you're not a fan of the driving, a lot of the fun in the game just disappears. But thankfully, most of the game revolves around being behind the wheel. On foot, the combat is fine, but not amazing. Max punches, grabs, and kicks enemies in a brawler-style system that works okay, but it can get repetitive, especially if you spend a lot of time clearing camps. Some of the side missions are repetitive too. Destroy this base, clear that convoy, grab scrap here, but at least they tie into the world logically. You're scavenging, upgrading your car, and surviving, so it fits the theme even if it feels grindy sometimes. Travel on foot can feel slow too, which is why the car is so central. You really notice the game was built around vehicular gameplay first. The story is serviceable, but not its strongest point. Max is dealing with revenge, gangs, and survival, and while there are a few interesting characters, most of them feel one-dimensional. It's the kind of story where you get the idea quickly and then focus more on the action and exploration than the plot itself. That said, the atmosphere supports the story really well. Storms roll in, sand swirls around, and the wasteland feels alive in a way that makes even minor objectives feel dangerous. Graphics and art design are solid for a game that's almost a decade old. The deserts, ruined cities, and scrap towers have this gritty charm. You can tell the designers wanted everything to feel heavy, like this world actually went through something catastrophic. Even the smaller touches, like enemy convoys moving in patterns or the sound of your car crunching over rubble, make the game feel immersive. Mad Max aged like fine wine in certain ways. The driving and car combat are still extremely satisfying, the world feels huge and oppressive, and scavenging for upgrades makes you feel like you're surviving in a real wasteland. The story and on-foot combat aren't amazing, and some side missions drag, but the core systems are solid enough that it's still fun to jump in. It's a game built around the feeling of being in the wasteland, behind the wheel, and battling chaos, and that feeling doesn't really get old. Even now you can spend hours just exploring, upgrading, and taking down enemy convoys, and it still scratches that itch that's unique to this game. Red Dead Redemption 1.
Marvelous shot, dear boy! The kind of deadly accuracy that can only be afforded by the West Dickens elixir. Come, I have plenty for all!
Red Dead Redemption still feels like stepping into a living, breathing Wild West, and honestly, that's the part that hasn't aged a bit. The world is huge, but it never feels empty. Riding through the plains, deserts, or snowy mountains, you notice little details everywhere. The way animals behave, guards patrolling towns, travelers moving along roads, or even a random stranger calling out for help. You can spend hours just exploring without even touching a main mission and still run into something interesting. Some of those random encounters feel small, like helping someone with a wagon stuck in the mud, but they actually make the world feel alive. Others can turn into full-on, chaotic moments, like running into a bandit gang when you least expect it, and it all just works together. The gameplay is smooth, even today. Riding horses feels natural, and the variety of horses means you can pick one that suits your style, whether you want speed, stamina, or control. Gunplay is satisfying. Shooting, reloading, and aiming in third person has a weight to it, and the Deadeye system still makes combat tense and fun. You can slow down time and target specific body parts, which makes duels and larger fights feel strategic instead of chaotic button mashing. That system alone adds a layer of depth that keeps combat interesting even if you've played the game multiple times. The world design is smart. Towns feel like actual communities with people talking, working, or arguing in the streets. Stores have specific roles, and wandering around makes you notice little touches like random music from a piano in a saloon or a blacksmith hammering away in a workshop. The variety in terrain also keeps exploration exciting. You go from deserts to mountains to swamps, and each area has its own feel, enemies, and wildlife. The attention to detail is ridiculous when you notice it all, and it's one of the reasons the game still holds up.
There it is, skeptics and dissenters, irrefutable proof. Do not let this opportunity pass you by.
Assassin's Creed Unity. Assassin's Creed Unity is one of those games that honestly gets a bad rap, but if you look past the launch problems, a lot of it still works really well today. The parkour and movement are smoother than almost any AC game before it, and Paris is just massive. Walking and running through the streets, jumping across rooftops and seeing Notre Dame in all its glory is still impressive. The city feels alive, with crowds of NPCs, markets, soldiers patrolling, and little side events happening all around you. Even years later, just wandering through different districts and looking at the architecture can make you feel like you're actually in 18th century Paris. The missions are a mixed bag, but some of the variety is still fun. You've got assassinations, stealth sections, tailing targets, and some of the co-op missions are surprisingly clever. Combat is tighter than in previous AC games, but it can still feel clunky sometimes. Timing counters and parries is important, and the AI occasionally does dumb stuff, like guards noticing you way too late, or suddenly spotting you through a wall. The customization in Unity is really nice. You can change weapons, armor, and outfits, and it actually feels meaningful because it changes stats and playstyle. Upgrading gear is rewarding, and the way gear interacts with movement and combat gives you more options in approaching missions. Side missions, crafting, and collectibles are there if you like to explore, though some of the side stuff can feel a bit repetitive, like clearing all the newspaper deliveries or murdering the same type of guards over and over again. Unity also has flaws that can't be ignored. The launch was infamous for bugs and glitches, some of which still pop up if you play certain versions today. There are moments where NPCs behave strangely or animations clip in weird ways. Parkour, while smoother than past games, can occasionally misjudge jumps or ledges, which can be frustrating if you're going for precision. The story isn't the strongest in the series either. It has good moments, especially with Arno and the personal revenge plot, but it's not as compelling as other entries like AC2 or Black Flag. Even with all that, Unity aged better than most people give it credit for. Paris itself is a masterpiece of level design. The verticality, the streets, the crowds, it makes traversal fun in a way few games can replicate. The sense of freedom, being able to climb almost anything and move across rooftops, is still satisfying today. And when the combat and stealth flow together, the game hits that sweet spot where you feel clever for planning your approach, sneaking around, and taking down multiple targets efficiently. Assassin's Creed Unity aged like fine wine in parts because it leaned into what the series does best: open world exploration, vertical parkour, and emergent gameplay while giving you a massive living city that still feels alive. It's rough around the edges, and the story and AI aren't perfect, but there's a lot to enjoy if you take the time to wander, climb, and explore Paris. For all the criticism it gets, the core experience of running across the city, planning assassinations, and just feeling like you're a part of the world still works today. Uncharted 4. So Uncharted 4 came out in 2016, and this is basically Naughty Dog showing everyone how it's done. This was Nathan Drake's send-off, and they went all out to make sure his final adventure was perfect. Right away, you can tell this game looks incredible. The graphics are absolutely insane. The environments are massive in detail, from Madagascar markets to lush jungles to this pirate colony called Libertalia. Water looks realistic, the lighting is phenomenal, and the character models are so detailed you can see every wrinkle and expression. Even years later, this thing is a visual showcase. The story hits way harder than previous Uncharted games. Nathan's older now, he's trying to live a normal life with Elena, but he's clearly bored. Then his brother Sam shows up, who was supposedly dead, and suddenly Drake is pulled back into the treasure hunting life. The whole game explores themes about obsession and letting go of the past. It's more mature and thoughtful than just being a fun action romp. The gameplay is the most polished it's ever been in the series. Drake moves fluidly, the shooting feels tight, and they added a grappling hook that changes everything. Swinging across gaps and using it in combat to zip around makes traversal way more dynamic. The rope adds verticality to fights and lets you approach encounters differently. Speaking of combat, you can actually go full stealth in this one. The arenas are bigger with tall grass and multiple paths. You can sneak through entire sections without firing a shot if you're careful. Or you can go loud and get into these intense shootouts. Having that flexibility makes replaying encounters fun because you can try different approaches. The set pieces are jaw-dropping, but they feel more grounded than previous games. There's still crazy moments like the car chase through Madagascar or the collapsing clock tower, but nothing feels too over the top. Everything has weight and consequence. When a building crumbles, you really feel the danger. Level design is way more open than before. You get these huge areas to explore with optional paths and hidden treasures everywhere. Madagascar especially gives you this big space where you're just driving around with Sam looking for clues. It's slower paced, but it lets you soak in the atmosphere and have conversations that build the characters. The pacing overall is different from other Uncharted games. There's more downtime between action sequences where you're just talking or exploring. Some people found it slow, but it makes the big moments hit harder. You're not on this constant adrenaline rush. There's time to breathe and reflect. Those quiet moments are some of the best parts. There's a whole chapter where young Nathan and Sam are just exploring their childhood home. It's pure character development with no action, and it's fantastic. Or the scene where Nate and Elena are playing Crash Bandicoot on the couch. These human moments make you care about what happens to these people. Libertalia as a location is fascinating. This whole pirate utopia that fell apart due to greed and betrayal. Exploring the ruins and piecing together what happened through environmental storytelling is engaging. The architecture is beautiful in a decayed way, and it ties into the game's themes about obsession destroying everything. Technically, the game is a monster. Loading screens are hidden brilliantly, the frame rate stays smooth even during intense moments, and everything just works. The attention to detail is crazy, like how Drake's shirt gets dirty or wet depending on the environment, or how characters realistically grab ledges and surfaces. Playing through Uncharted 4 feels like the ultimate refinement of everything Naughty Dog learned over the years. The climbing is smooth, the shooting is satisfying, the stealth works well, and the story keeps you hooked. It's the most complete package in the series. What makes it age so well is that it was already pushing boundaries when it came out. The graphics were top tier then, and they're still impressive now. The storytelling was mature and thoughtful, which doesn't get dated. The gameplay mechanics are polished enough that nothing feels clunky going back to it. God of War 3. Okay, so God of War 3, even so many years later, still has that epic feel, mostly because it throws you into massive set pieces and insane battles from the moment you start. The combat is tight, brutal, and satisfying. Kratos feels powerful in a way few characters do. Every swing of the Blades of Exile, every grab, and every combo lands with a weight that makes the fights feel visceral. Boss fights are still incredible today. They're huge, over the top, and creative, and figuring out how to beat some of them is actually fun instead of just mashing buttons. The mix of puzzles, platforming, and combat keeps things from feeling repetitive too much, even if the core combat loop is pretty consistent throughout the game. The world design is a big reason it holds up. Ancient Greece feels massive and mythological in a way that's visually impressive even today. From Olympus to the underworld, the locations are huge, detailed, and full of environmental hazards that actually make traversal interesting. Some of the platforming sections are tricky, and honestly, some can be annoying if you mess up a jump, but they also add tension and break up the combat nicely. The scale of the environments, combined with the epic cutscenes and camera angles, still makes the game feel cinematic and grand. Even now, going back and playing through the battles, climbing massive statues, or smashing through hordes of enemies feels satisfying in a way that few older games manage. God of War 3 holds up because it doesn't rely on trends or modern mechanics. It's pure spectacle, tight gameplay, and epic storytelling rolled into one. It's a little rough in spots, with some repetitive combat and filler, but the experience as a whole is still exciting, grand, and memorable. That's why, years later, it's easy to see why people still remember this one fondly. Metroid Prime. Alright, so Metroid Prime, this game came out all the way back in 2002 on the GameCube, and dude, this thing was a massive gamble that paid off in the best way possible. So you gotta understand, Metroid was always the 2D side-scroller, right? That was the whole identity of the series. Then Retro Studios, this relatively unknown team at the time, they're like, yeah, we're gonna make it first person. And everyone freaked out, because like, how do you take Metroid and not completely ruin it by changing the perspective? Turns out they absolutely nailed it. This isn't a first-person shooter though, that's the thing people don't get. Yeah, you're in first person and you're shooting stuff, but it's really more about exploration and atmosphere. The way you move through these alien environments on planet Thieves, scanning everything, slowly unlocking new abilities that let you access previously blocked off areas, that's pure Metroid DNA. They just translated it into 3D perfectly. The scanning mechanic is genius. You got this visor that lets you scan literally everything. Enemies, objects, lore entries, and it all adds to the world building. You're piecing together what happened to the space pirates and the Chozo civilization through these environmental clues. It makes you feel like an actual explorer uncovering secrets instead of just running and gunning through levels. The atmosphere in this game is unreal. You're alone on this hostile planet and it's quiet, like eerily quiet, except for ambient sounds and music. Every area has its own vibe, and the art direction, man, it still looks good today. Yeah, the textures are dated obviously, but the design of everything holds up beautifully. The way your visor fogs up when you go from cold to hot areas, or how you can see Samus's face reflected in the visor when there's a bright flash, these little touches add so much immersion. You really feel like you're inside this power suit. Combat is satisfying, but it's not the main focus. You're mostly dealing with the environment and figuring out where to go next. When you do fight enemies or bosses though, it feels weighty. The lock-on system works great, different beam weapons have different uses, and bosses require you to actually think and use your arsenal creatively. What makes Metroid Prime so special is how it trusts you to figure things out. The game doesn't hold your hand constantly, you get minimal direction, and you're expected to explore and pay attention to your surroundings. When you're stuck, you gotta actually think about where you haven't been or what abilities you recently got. That sense of discovery when you find a new path or secret is so rewarding. The backtracking doesn't feel tedious either, which is wild for a Metroidvania game. Getting new abilities like the Boost Ball or Spider Ball opens up so many shortcuts in new areas that going back through old zones feels fresh. You're constantly finding stuff you missed the first time through. The space pirates as enemies are cool because they're actually intelligent. You can scan their logs and see them discussing Samus and how terrified they are of her. It's subtle storytelling that makes you feel like this legendary bounty hunter without the game explicitly telling you how badass you are. The Morph Ball sections are fun as hell. Rolling around as a ball, dropping bombs, navigating these tight passages. It's such a unique mechanic that only Metroid really does. Some of the Morph Ball puzzles are tricky, but in a good way where you feel smart for solving them. Sequence breaking is a thing in this game too if you're skilled enough. You can skip certain upgrades or access areas way earlier than intended using advanced techniques. Sleeping dogs. Sleeping Dogs is one of my most favorite games of all time, mostly because it does a lot of things differently than other games. First off, the city is amazing. Hong Kong feels alive in a way that's hard to explain. You've got busy streets, narrow alleyways, glowing neon signs, markets with vendors, and random people walking around doing their own thing. Sometimes you just stop for a second and notice how detailed everything is. The way traffic moves, how people react if you bump into them, or even small fights breaking out in the streets. It's not perfect, but it feels lived in, and that makes exploring really satisfying. The movement and combat are where the game shines. Fighting isn't about guns the whole time. You mostly punch, kick, counter, and throw people around, and chaining moves together feels really rewarding. You can do a quick dodge and follow it up with a grab or a kick, and when you pull off a big combo, it feels satisfying. There's a rhythm to the fights, and even though it can get a little repetitive if you do a lot of the same encounters, it's still more engaging than just shooting at enemies all the time. The parkour and rooftop sections also had a lot. You can jump across roofs, climb walls, swing off ledges, and chase someone or escape the cops in ways that feel fluid and fun. Driving is a mixed bag. The cars are okay, but sometimes they feel a little floaty, and it can get frustrating when you're trying to weave through traffic during a chase. The story keeps things interesting, even if it's not super deep. You're Weishan, an undercover cop, trying to bring down the triads from the inside. Some characters are over the top, and a few cutscenes get dramatic in a silly way, but the main arc works because you feel tension being undercover. You're caught between doing what's right and keeping your cover, and that moral tension actually makes the missions more engaging. You care a little more about fights and choices because it isn't just random chaos. It feels like you're living in this world and reacting to it. There are flaws, of course. Some side missions can get repetitive, like clearing small gang hideouts or delivering items. Certain collectibles feel boring to track down, and the AI can act dumb at times. Enemies sometimes notice you too late or too quickly, and civilians will occasionally move in ways that break immersion. But these flaws are minor compared to what the game gets right. The combat, movement, city design, and freedom to explore more than make up for them. The world design is a big reason this game still works. Every district has a different vibe. Some are bustling markets, some are high-rise office areas, and some are cramped alleys filled with crime. The day-night cycle, weather effects, and small random events all make it feel alive. You can chase a target across rooftops, fight your way through a busy street, and then jump into a car and drive through traffic while avoiding pedestrians and cops. That mix of vertical movement, street-level chaos, and driving is unique and still fun today. So yeah, overall, the combat is still satisfying, the city's still alive, and exploring or messing around never really gets old. It's not perfect, story isn't super deep, side missions can feel repetitive, and AI isn't perfect, but the core systems are solid enough that you can still hop in and have a good time. Running across rooftops, jumping into fights, and exploring the city makes the game feel alive, and that's why it still works years later. Max Payne 3.
Now get down!
So Max is older now, completely wrecked by booze and painkillers, and he's basically a shell of who he used to be. The noir atmosphere from the first two games is mostly gone. Now you're in sunny Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is this crazy contrast. But it works because Max is this dark, broken dude stumbling through this bright, colorful world, and it just emphasizes how out of place he is. Max is working private security for this wealthy family, and of course everything goes sideways immediately. People get kidnapped, Max screws up, more people die, and he's just drowning in guilt the whole time. The narrative jumps around between different time periods, which keeps you guessing about what actually happened. It's noir storytelling, but updated for a more modern, cynical vibe. The gunplay though? Oh man, the gunplay is phenomenal. Rockstar took the bullet time mechanic and polished it to perfection. Diving through the air in slow motion while precisely picking off enemies never gets old. Level design is really strong too. You're fighting through nightclubs, favelas, office buildings, airports, even a freaking stadium. Each environment is detailed and destructible, cover gets shredded by gunfire, and there's multiple paths through most encounters. The game keeps throwing you new scenarios at you so it doesn't get repetitive. Also, what's interesting is how divisive this game was with fans. Some people loved the new direction, others hated that it moved away from the noir aesthetic of the originals. I get both sides, but I think what Rockstar did works. They kept the core gameplay intact while updating everything else for a modern audience. Max as a character here is fascinating because he's not cool or aspirational, he's pathetic and self-destructive. He keeps making terrible decisions, drinking himself stupid, and getting people killed. But you stick with him because underneath all that mess, there's still a guy trying to do the right thing even when he knows it's pointless. That airport level is absolutely insane, by the way. You're fighting through this huge shootout that just keeps escalating. The pacing of that sequence is perfect, building tension until it explodes into chaos. It's one of those levels you remember long after finishing the game. Max Payne 3 also looks incredible on PC if you got the hardware. Rockstar's optimization was solid, and cranking everything to max settings makes it a visual showcase. Even the console versions look great for 2012. What makes this game age well is that the shooting mechanics are just fundamentally excellent. Graphics can get dated, but satisfying gunplay lasts forever. Diving through the air in bullet time while dual-wielding guns will always be fun. That doesn't change. Max Payne 3 proved that Rockstar could take someone else's series and make it their own while respecting what came before. It's a different beast from the original games, but it's still excellent in its own right. That's why it's aged so well, because at its core, it's just a really well-made shooter with style and substance. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Alright, so Wolfenstein: The New Colossus came out in 2017, and this game is just wild from start to finish. Machine Games took everything they built with the New Order and cranked it up to 11 in the most insane ways possible. So the setup is you're BJ Blazkowicz and you're literally dying. Like, the game starts with you in a wheelchair on a stolen Nazi submarine, barely holding it together after getting messed up at the end of the first game. You're coughing up blood, can barely stand, and then Nazis attack the sub, so you gotta defend it while being half dead. It's such a brutal opening that immediately sets the tone. The whole premise is that the Nazis won World War II and now they occupy America. You're seeing the Ku Klux Klan working with Nazi soldiers, propaganda everywhere, and this alternate history version of 1960s America under fascist rule. It's dark and uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point. The game doesn't shy away from showing how messed up this world is. Gameplay-wise, it's classic Wolfenstein. You're mowing down Nazis with ridiculous weapons, and it feels amazing. The guns are meaty and powerful, whether you're dual-wielding shotguns or using the laser weapons. Combat is fast and aggressive. The game rewards you for pushing forward instead of hiding behind cover. The hatchet is still your melee weapon, and getting up close to execute Nazis never stops being satisfying. You can throw it too, which is great for stealth kills. Speaking of stealth, you can approach a lot of encounters quietly if you want, taking out commanders before they call reinforcements, or, just go loud and cause mayhem. Both playstyles work. The level variety is pretty crazy. You're fighting on that submarine, then you're in irradiated New York, then you're in Roswell, New Mexico at a Nazi-occupied town, then Venus, which is just absurd. The game keeps throwing you new environments at you, and they're all visually interesting and fun to fight through. The boss fights are kinda weak, honestly. There's not many of them, and the ones that exist aren't super memorable. The game is more about the moment-to-moment combat and exploration than big set-piece battles. Visually, the game looks great. id Tech's 6 engine doing work. The art direction is fantastic with all this retro-futuristic Nazi technology mixed with 1960s Americana. The color palette is vibrant, which contrasts nicely with the dark themes. Performance on consoles was a bit rough at launch with some frame rate dips. The PC version ran better if you had decent specs. Nothing game-breaking, but noticeable during intense firefights. Upgrading your abilities and weapons add some light RPG elements. You can spec into stealth, armor, or health-focused builds. It's not super deep, but it gives you some customization options. The game is pretty short. You can blow through it in like 10 to 12 hours. Some people felt that was too brief for a full-price game, but honestly, there's no filler. Every mission has purpose, and the pacing stays tight throughout. Hitman Blood Money. Hitman Blood Money is one of those games that somehow keeps getting better with time. You play as Agent 47, a professional hitman, and right from the start, you know you're stepping into a world that's all about thinking ahead, being patient, and being clever. What really makes this game special is how much freedom it gives you. Every mission is like a giant playground for your own creativity. You can sneak around quietly, blend in with crowds, or dress up in different disguises to get close to your targets without anyone noticing. There's a real sense of satisfaction when you pull off a plan perfectly, especially if you do it in a way no one expects. The missions are all over the world, and each one has its own vibe. One moment you're in a huge mansion full of rich people at a fancy party, and the next you're in a grimy warehouse or a small town full of unsuspecting civilians. The level design is amazing because it feels alive. People walk around doing their own thing, security guards patrol in realistic patterns, and there's always a hidden route or secret spot you can use to get the drop on someone. Even now, the way the game builds tension in each level feels top-notch. You're constantly thinking, planning, watching, and waiting, and when you finally get it right, it feels amazing. The graphics, while dated by today's standards, don't really take away from the experience. The environments are detailed enough to feel real, and the animations make the world feel like it's moving on its own. There's also something about the dark, moody music that makes sneaking around feel intense without being over the top. It gives every mission this feeling like something could go wrong at any moment, which keeps you on your toes the whole time. The story is simple but effective. Agent 47 is on a mission to rise through the ranks of the underworld, taking on bigger and riskier jobs while dealing with rival assassins and people who want to take him down. The story doesn't hit you over the head, but it gives you a reason to care and keeps you moving through the game. What's really cool is how your actions can change how much money you earn and how successful your missions are, which makes every decision feel important. Even today, Blood Money feels smooth. The controls work, the missions feel alive, and there's so much variety in how you can approach each target that it never gets boring. You can replay the same level multiple times and find new ways to complete it, which makes it feel like it has endless life. This is one of those rare games where you can step back years later, play a mission, and still feel the same thrill, tension, and satisfaction you did the first time. Hitman Blood Money doesn't just hold up. It proves that a game doesn't need the newest graphics to be brilliant. It's smart, it's tense, it's creative, and it's one of the best stealth games ever made. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. Okay, where to even start? This game isn't just like fine wine, it's like some legendary bottle of wine found in a king's tomb that somehow still tastes perfect. When you boot this game up today, it's honestly hard to believe it came out back in 2005. The way it moves, the way it feels, it's just smoother than so many stealth games that came out last year. You are Sam Fisher, the ultimate shadow, and the game makes you feel like him. He's not just some silent tough guy, he's this older, kind of grumpy dude who is just the best at what he does. But the main reason this game is a masterpiece is the light and dark. It's not just an idea, it's the whole game. You have a little light meter on your suit, and if it's all the way down, you are invisible. A guard can literally walk up, bump into you, say excuse me, and keep walking because he just thinks he bumped a wall. It's the most powerful feeling. You aren't just hiding from the dark, you are the dark. And you control it. This is the best part. You see a bright light shining in a hallway. You can take out your pistol and pop, just shoot the light bulb. The whole hallway goes dark, and now it's your hallway. You have a gadget on your rifle called the OCP. You can aim it at a security camera, a computer screen, or a big overhead light, and click. It shuts it off for a few seconds. You control the environment. You are the predator, and the guards are just walking around in your world. The sound is just as important. The game measures how much noise you make. If you run, you're loud. If you walk, you're quiet. But it goes deeper. Walking on carpet is almost silent. Walking on a metal grate is super loud. You have to think about every single step. It makes you slow down and be patient. When you finally sneak past 3 guards by walking slowly on the carpet while they're all looking the other way, you feel like a genius. And the move Sam has? He's like an old ninja. He can do a split jump in a narrow hallway, bracing himself against both walls above a guard's head. He can hang from a pipe on the ceiling, wait for a guard to walk under him, and drop down to grab him. The game just gives you the tools and the level and says, okay, figure it out. It even had this co-op mode. It was a whole different story with its own levels built just for 2 players. You and a friend had to work together. You'd have to boost your buddy up to a high ledge or stand back to back to take out 2 guards at once. It's something games still can't get right, and this game nailed it decades ago. It just all comes together. The dark and light, the sound, the gadgets like sticky cameras you can use to spy on people, the amazing music by Tobin that's all tense and spooky. Chaos Theory is the peak of stealth. It respects you, it trusts you to be smart, and that is why it will always, always be amazing to play.
Forget it. I don't want to find anything anyway. Get behind the cover!
Ryse, Son of Rome. Ryse, Son of Rome is one of those games that just makes you stop for a second and think, damn, this still looks crazy good. Like seriously, it came out more than 10 years ago and it still looks better than half the new stuff dropping today. The detail in the armor, the way sunlight hits the shields, the facial animations, the blood, the smoke, everything just feels alive. It's wild how good it still looks. You play as Marius Titus, this loyal Roman soldier whose whole world basically falls apart. His family gets murdered and that kicks off his whole story of revenge, duty, and war. It's not some huge open world game, it's a straight story-driven ride, and that's honestly what makes it work so well. Every mission feels like a scene from a movie. You're leading Roman legions, marching through burning villages, standing on beaches as arrows fly past. It all looks and sounds massive. The thing that really hits about Ryse is the atmosphere. You can almost feel ancient Rome when you play. The crowded streets, the chaos of war, the shouting soldiers, everything is detailed and immersive. The way the game mixes gameplay and cutscenes is so smooth too. There's no weird pause or loading screen between scenes. 1 second you're fighting, and the next you're watching a perfectly shot cinematic. And it just blends together so naturally. It's like watching a movie, but you're in control. The combat, yeah, it's pretty simple, but it feels powerful. Every sword swing, every shield bash, every finisher has weight. You don't just mash buttons, you time your moves, watch for enemies, and hit those brutal executions that make you wince a little. The camera zooms in, the slow motion kicks, and it just feels so satisfying. The game nails that cinematic combat feeling where you're not just fighting, you're performing. Marius himself is a great main character. He's serious, loyal, and broken at the same time. You can really feel the pain and anger behind everything he does. And the voice acting sells it. Every line, every scream, every quiet moment has emotion in it. The story's not overly long or complicated, but it's done well. It gives you enough reason to care, and by the end, it really hits hard. Ryse also nails the vibe of Roman warfare better than any game ever has. Those shield wall moments where you command your men to raise their shields while arrows rain down feel so good. It's like you're actually leading a squad, not just playing solo. The whole game has that heavy, grounded, cinematic tone. No goofy moments, no filler, just straight up drama and war. What's crazy is that a lot of people didn't get it when it came out. They said it was too short or too simple, but when you play it now, it actually feels perfect. It's focused, it knows what it's doing, and it never drags. You can finish it in a few sessions, but it stays with you after. The story, the visuals, the atmosphere, it all sticks. Even today, when you boot it up on PC or a new console, it still feels modern. The graphics still blow you away, the combat still feels punchy, and the presentation is just unreal. Spec Ops: The Line.
Target down!
Cover me! I'm reloading!
More coming over the dune!
Alright, so Spec Ops: The Line. This came out in 2012, and dude, this game messed people up. Like, legitimately messed with their heads in ways most shooters don't even attempt. On the surface, it looks like just another generic military shooter, right? You got your 3-man squad, you're a special ops captain named Walker, and you're heading into Dubai after these massive sandstorms buried the city. Seems straightforward. Go in, find survivors, figure out what happened to this rogue battalion that stayed behind. Standard military stuff. Except it's not that at all. This game is basically Apocalypse Now meets Heart of Darkness, but in a video game, and it uses the medium to absolutely destroy you mentally. I'm gonna try not to spoil too much, but it's hard to talk about why this game matters without getting into some of it. The gameplay itself is honestly pretty mediocre. It's a cover-based third-person shooter, and the mechanics are fine, but nothing special. Shooting feels okay, the cover system works, but it's not gonna blow your mind compared to other shooters from that era. And that's kind of intentional. The developers wanted the gameplay to feel routine, so the story hits harder. Dubai as a setting is incredible though. You're fighting through this buried city with skyscrapers half submerged in sand, luxury hotels destroyed and covered in dunes, and there's this apocalyptic beauty to it all. The art direction carries this game hard. Everything has this desaturated look that gets progressively worse as the story goes darker. Walker and a squad start off as these confident military dudes doing their job. The banter is light, they're cracking jokes, everything seems fine, but as you push deeper into Dubai, things start getting weird and morally complicated. You're making decisions that seem right in the moment, but the consequences are horrifying. There's this one scene, and it's one of the most disturbing moments in gaming. The game forces you to do something terrible, and then it shows you exactly what you did, and you can't look away. It's brutal and intentional, making you complicit in the horror instead of just watching it happen. What's genius about Spec Ops is how it deconstructs the military shooter genre. All those games where you're the hero mowing down hundreds of enemies without consequence, where everything is black and white, good guys versus bad guys, this game takes that formula and asks, what if you're not the hero? What if your presence is making everything worse? The loading screen tips change as you progress. Early on, they're standard tutorial stuff, but later they start calling you out. This isn't a game about redemption or heroism, it's about the cost of violence and the lies we tell ourselves to justify our actions. Heavy stuff for what looked like a generic shooter. Graphically, the game is dated now for sure. Character models are stiff, textures are muddy, but again, the art direction makes up for technical limitations. The way sand moves and covers everything, the lighting during sandstorms, the contrast between destroyed luxury and desperate survival, it all creates this unique atmosphere. What makes Spec Ops: The Line special is how it uses interactivity to make its point. Books and movies can tell you war is hell, but this game makes you pull the trigger. It forces you to participate in atrocities and then asks you if you enjoyed it. That player agency creates guilt in a way other mediums can't replicate. The game sold poorly, which is a shame, but also kind of makes sense. People bought it expecting a fun shooter and got traumatized. The marketing didn't help either. They couldn't really advertise what the game actually was without spoiling it. So it flew under the radar for a lot of people. The mediocre shooting doesn't matter as much because you're so invested in what's happening narratively. You keep pushing forward not because it's fun, but because you need to know how deep this rabbit hole goes.